doesn't seem like a guy that wants to go to LA. He seems more like a Clipper. And he just bought a, $13 million house, I think, in San Diego. So it definitely feels like he's going west. And I think it's going to be more with the Clipper side of it. Then you start getting into, okay, what does Kyrie Irving do? That's the one guy that I feel like no one really knows. Is he going to go to New York? Is he going back to team up with LeBron? Could Boston keep him there because they'll get AD for 1 year and somehow their relationship, they can get them both long-term? I think he's the one guy this summer that's going to really change things, because I think Klay's going to stay with Golden State. I think Durant probably will leave and end up in New York. I think Klay will get maxed out.
Wow. Okay.
And then it'll be, what do they pay Draymond? Because Draymond does a lot of stuff as a glue guy there, but his shooting is so bad, he's actually more of a liability now. All his numbers have dropped. I could see them even keeping a guy like Cousins because of what he does in their screen game and the fact that he's just a big body and he can step out and shoot the three better than Draymond.
And he's been impressive. I got to say, Justin,
yeah,
he's been impressive. Any big guy,
he's been very impressive.
Coming off of an Achilles injury, the first thing you worry about is he going to be an explosive player anymore? Cousins is really playing well.
Yeah, he's looked good. And I think that I don't know what the market will be, but it almost feels like the Lakers are going to get boxed into a situation where they could be overpaying a guy like Cousins just to get him there and giving a guy like Kemba a huge deal just to try to get LeBron some people around him. Because it could work out where, Kyrie stays in Boston or ends up in New York with Durant. Because I think the Pelicans are going to wait till this summer and they're going to see what Boston throws at them. All these picks and things like that will start to get worked out. They'll be able to package some kind of deal. They seem to be floating Tatum, if they're serious about that or not. Tatum would by far and away be the best player that they could get out of what the Lakers could offer. I mean, if you had a chance to get Kuzma or Tatum, you're taking Tatum. If you got a chance to get Ingram or Tatum, you're taking Tatum.
Every day.
If you could throw a guy like sign and trade Rozier
every day
and you get some picks, the Pelicans suddenly have something to work with on that team. So, yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the landscape, it's definitely not as pretty as it was. Because despite what AD's dad said, which I think was totally from clutch, to come out and basically try to kill off any desire to go to Boston. But I think if he gets there and the city embraces him and they make a run at the championship, how could you not want to go back there? Especially you have a young guy like Kyrie and you're going to have some other young stars there. What else would he be looking for at that point versus going and playing with a guy like LeBron on the Lakers team that may, in order to get him, the Lakers are going to either have to shed a bunch of players or they're going to have to wait 2 years and LeBron's going to be 35 going on 36. So AD's going to be carrying that team.
Yeah,
There's a lot this summer, man. I mean, it's going to be crazy. You're going to have all this stuff. There's going to be a ton of stories that will come out at All-Star Week. A lot of rumors will come out. Guys will start talking. Those rumors will come out. But I'm telling you, man, this offseason and when we get past the finals into July 1st in free agency, it's going to be wild.
Yeah, as far as the Kyrie thing, I don't know where I really land on that as far as what he might do. You kind of felt like the Boston thing. Yeah, he got traded there, but it seemed like there was somewhat of a, embrace there with him in Boston, at least at first. And now with the whole thing about talking to LeBron, apologizing to LeBron, maybe does he go to the Knicks? Maybe does he team up with Durant? Maybe does he? It just seems like his future's not in Boston. So I think the risk for Boston and AD, I think it's pretty high. And Jason Tatum, you look at how he played in the playoff run last year. I'm very, very careful about trading him if I don't have any guarantees that a guy like AD is going to sign long term. Because to get rid of a guy like Tatum you just don't want to do that if it pays off to ultimately nothing.
But think about this. Even if they float the idea out there, so maybe behind the scenes they say, you know what, we are absolutely not trading Jason Tatum. But they go to Woj, they go to Shams, and they say, hey, you know what, we nobody's off the table. And that gets reported out there. Maybe that's enough for the Pelicans to go, okay, that sounds like worth waiting for. So let's wait until the offseason and get a deal. Even if they have no thought about trading him, just floating that fact out there, it may have played a role, it may not have. But the fact is, Anthony Davis is still a Pelican, and he's going to be available this summer when the Celtics actually have a chance. Because it feels like now, Eric, I don't know what you thought, but really the Celtics were the only team at the top of the East that didn't make their team better.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like they're all in on the summer just trying to get Anthony Davis, and maybe even at the risk of not being as good this year. Do you feel like did you think they've boxed themselves in now with this after you saw the deals that Toronto, Philly, and even Milwaukee made?
Yeah, I can't disagree with that at all because when them not making a splash and really kind of pushing all their chips to one side and waiting on the summer, it definitely feels like they're going to make a big play for maybe one direction that they want to go. And if it doesn't work out, they're either status quo or they're starting to break up a little bit. Do they start to, engage with other trade offers with other teams? That's on the table there. And I think you're right. I think they put a lot of stock into what could happen this summer. Do you think that Durant and Kyrie are going to end up with the Knicks? Really, is that the question? Because we talk about all the time the first domino to fall. I think you're going to see after the season, what does Kawhi do? Does he go out west? Does he stay in Toronto? I don't think so. But then what do Durant, guys like that do? Because I think that, especially with Durant, if he goes from the west back to the east, I don't know how this all plays out. And the Celtics, as good as they've been, even look at Gordon Hayward. He's a six man right now. He's not even really part of who they thought he was going to be for them prior to his injury when they did a big trade to bring him in. So I think the Celtics just maybe everyone gives Ainge a lot of credit and he deserves a lot of credit, but you're right. I don't think they're quite where they thought they'd be in the power shift and the power struggle is just in that Eastern Conference. And then when that power shifts even more, if a guy like Durant comes over, I don't know. I think the Celtics could be a little bit in trouble if their plan doesn't work.
Well, look, Danny Ainge, the rumor has been for years that the Celtics were acquiring assets with the goal of getting Anthony Davis. That's been out there for years now. And it just felt like, well, the Pelicans, would they actually entertain trading him? And then like last year they said no. And all of a sudden now it's like, oh, he is open. And I think that really what they're trying to do is just wait to get to the summer. And I think how good their deal will be based on if Anthony Davis gives them any type of assurances that he's open to re-signing there, or he might, if he would re-sign there. I think if he would absolutely agree, I think that Tatum might be on the table. If he seems like he's going to be a one-year rental and they just go for a title, there's no way you can trade Tatum at that point for 1 year. Maybe Jaylen Brown, you get rid of him because it feels like they've got too many guys that sort of do the same thing and it's just screwing up their rotation. If you watch the Celtics, if Kyrie and one other guy is out, they seem to play pretty good. Or if Kyrie's in and Jaylen Brown's out or Marcus Smart's out, the guys play better because they're actually feeling like they're in the flow of the game. And look, Gordon Hayward, even if you look at Paul George the year he's having, he didn't come back super strong. He didn't come back as the same way after his big leg break. So it may take Gordon Hayward until next year to sort of get back to the player that he was in Utah, because the guy did go through a devastating injury last year, and he probably is from a mental and a confidence standpoint. It's just going to take him a little bit to get going again. And he's thrust right back in on a team that's under the spotlight. So that doesn't help. But yeah, I don't think Boston's in trouble if they don't get Anthony Davis because they still have a good team. But if they lose Kyrie and they don't get AD, then you have to start looking at this team of like, okay, now what do you do? Because are you really just going to be all in on Gordon Hayward and Tatum? And you're going to have to probably sign Rozier back. So they got to do some work. They've got to figure out a way to get AD and to get Kyrie to stay. And then they're going to be a team that's going to challenge for championships for years. Or they're going to be a team that's going to be a 4 or 5 seed every single year if they lose Kyrie and don't land AD, Eric. It feels like it's that simple because the Eastern Conference, they all got better. When you look at what Toronto did, Philly did, Milwaukee did, which one of those teams did you feel like improved their roster the most?
Wow, that's tough because I feel like Philly, I feel like Philly went all in on this year, and I think that was a smart move. But I also like the fact that they shipped Markelle Fultz out of town. I think that was just a kind of a dark cloud hanging over the franchise at this point.
How shocked were you when you saw they got a first back, even though it's protected, but they got a first? That's the Thunder pick.
Oh, I mean, very shocked. And again, I like what they're doing. I like their strategy. I like the fact that they're going to get a little bit more shooting. I like the fact they're going to get a little bit better depth. And I feel like Embiid, Simmons, I feel like your core is there and you just needed 1 or 2 more pieces. Notice how I didn't say Butler because I'm just not sure where Butler's head is at right now. I don't know if he's playing in Philly and still has 1 foot out the door. I just can't figure that guy out. And I was hoping for a lot more, at least in terms of mental investment from Jimmy Butler. And I just don't know. But if he's playing up to his standard and you've got Simmons and Embiid, and then you've got these other guys, Tobias coming in, you've got guys, it seems like, where they can put out a front five that can compete with anybody in that Eastern Conference. Again, I don't know if it's enough to beat the Warriors. I don't know if anybody has enough to beat the Warriors this year now that Cousins is playing the way he is and if they're fully healthy. But I like their position now in the East. I have to give it to them a little bit, although Toronto, who is playing great, and Milwaukee's playing great, it just seems like they all went to the point of saying, especially in Toronto, okay, we'll get Gasol. We've got Kawhi Leonard at least through this year. We can make a title push. We can at least get to the finals and give it all we've got. I don't know. I mean, that's where the stress in Boston comes. You've got these teams, and if the Knicks change their roster in the next 2 years significantly, I just think that's where my feelings are with Boston is you've got some of these Eastern Conference teams, particularly Philly, that are going all in. And so Boston's window just got a little bit smaller for me.
Well, their path got a lot tougher because, look, I didn't like the Philly deal from the standpoint that they gave up 2 firsts. They gave up the Miami pick in 2021, and then they gave up their own first to get an expiring deal in Harris.
Yeah, it seemed expensive, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I said they went all in on this year.
They did, because now they potentially could lose Butler and Harris in the offseason, and they've lost some of their assets in the future. So that was my concern there. I mean, Tobias, I feel like he fits in on this team because they need shooting. They desperately need shooting. I hate that they got rid of Shamet because he was actually a guy that was getting minutes for them. He struggled defensively, but he was a good shooter off the bench. Muscala was a guy that could stretch the floor off the bench. And look, they've made some other moves that people probably don't really care about listening to the show, but it's guys that give them extra depth. I liked what Milwaukee did,
okay,
Eric. I love the fact that they got Mirotic on this team because it's another shooter. The other night against the Wizards, Giannis went 17 of 21 for the floor. They had a 50-point first quarter in that game, and now they've added another shooter to help spread the floor. I mean, Giannis is basically unguardable if he gets to the paint because I think from the free throw line, he can stretch his arm out and dunk at that point. So it's pretty darn hard to stop him or to double team him. And he's such a good passer. He's going to find the open guy. You put another dead-eye shooter out there with them, and you can spread the floor the way they can with Middleton. Then they can bring in Ilyasova. You've got Bledsoe at the point guard. I just feel like they might not have all the names, but they're kind of starting to become like a Warriors light or a Warriors East Coast where they've got all these shooters and these pieces that sort of fit together really well, not guys that all do sort of the same stuff, would play the same position, sort of like Boston has going on, but they kind of have these pieces that all do something a little bit different and they work well together. So I think for them, it'll be, do they have the playoff experience and the moxie to make a run? But the fact that they didn't have to give up a first, they got rid of Thon Maker. They were able to take Stanley Johnson and flip him in a second and go get Mirotic. I thought what they did was pretty impressive. They already got George Hill earlier this year. Lopez is playing well for them. So I think they're lined up to be a very, very tough out in the East. And it's pretty shocking that the Milwaukee Bucks could actually be in the Eastern Conference Finals, probably against the Warriors. But, I mean, I was shocked by that. But was there a deal? We talked about the Sixers a little bit. Any deals that surprised you or you just felt like just were a bad deal, or does it still go back to what we talked about last week with the Knicks and Porzingis?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's any deal that I saw, at least up into the trade deadline, that was like a huge shocker to me. I think the Porzingis thing still hangs over the league. I think it hangs over the league in as much as reporters are still asking Kevin Durant about the New York Knicks. There just seems to be something going on there. There seems to be people who feel like there's inside knowledge going on there. To me, that still remains the biggest shocker, because if you're going to get rid of Porzingis and kind of go all in on one strategy, which is to have enough money to sign 1 or 2 huge free agents, and you don't do that, then you're still the last place Knicks as they are this year. There's no difference. You haven't improved your team at all. To me, it feels like you have to know that it's going to work, because if it doesn't, you're just going to be in last place for a long time. Justin, the Bucks, the Raptors, the 76ers, the Celtics, as we just talked about, to me, those 4 teams now in the East, I mean, 2 of them already have a better record than the Warriors through this part of the season, the Bucks and the Raptors. I think, though, that the top 4 teams in the East are now better than the top 4 teams in the West. Not the Warriors overall. I think there's a better top 4 in the East. So That's interesting because we've talked about how for years and years, the East is so easy and the West is so hard. That's why we didn't think LeBron should go to the West.